Tonight, Parliament House in Canberra has also been lit up in the colours of the Israeli state, the Jewish flag of blue and white. Marine Faruqi is a Greens senator, and she wrote on Twitter today in response to those walls being lit up, "One colonial government supporting another. What a disgrace." What is the disgrace? What is the disgrace here? The disgrace is obviously what has happened in the past couple of days in Israel. The potential disgrace is what the response may well end up being in Gaza. But the disgrace is also that the people who live in the great freedom and peace and harmony of Australia, who want to rage like they are on the streets of other parts of the world. Australia is at its best when we don't care whether you were born here or you come here, but we all understand that the rules here are different than in other parts of the world. The ability to have the circuit breaker of family members taking people from those parts of the world to this incredible part of the world means that some of the stuff that we are seeing should not happen here. And to all of the people on every element of this who aren't going to protests or aren't holding candles in vigil, the difficulty that they are all feeling this evening is obvious. Again, I want to show my full support to my dear friend Sharri Markson. Her editorial this evening was one of the most moving things I've ever seen on television. It's available now at skynews.com.au. As for what is happening right now, well, Israel still has not been able to get militants out of the southern part of the country. There are reports that even as few as 2 militants are able to cause horrific damage to things like police stations in the southern part of Israel. So Israel, before it can start its movement in towards Gaza to try and get the people responsible for those horrific, unacceptable kidnappings and unforgivable acts of terror and murder, including what happened at the music festival, let alone the terror that happened to people in their homes. Well, as we speak, that is the operation that is taking place in Israel, but also, if we've got a live picture from Gaza here, the latest and live pictures there are that, again, you can see the retaliation as Israel is trying to go after the places where they believe the leadership or even the members of Hamas, a terrorist organisation as defined by many countries around the world. They are trying to do so without killing civilians, but inevitably, once this turns to a ground offensive, and there's 100,000 troops on the Israeli border going to try to get the people that are currently behind those lines, behind the lines and currently being held hostage. We, again, will get to all of that in a moment or two's time. But Penny Wong, she decided to tweet today that Australia was unequivocal in its condemnation of what had taken place, but it's the last line of her tweet that seems to have caused some issues today, including that Australia urges the exercise of restraint and protection of civilian lives. Now, this has been interpreted by many to be a soft touch, particularly a soft touch to suggest that Palestinian lives would be more important than the Jewish lives that have been lost in the past couple of days, a point that has been made by the opposition leader today.
When people talk about Israel having to show restraint, it's completely and utterly the wrong time for that sort of language. It's a time to stand with the people of Israel to make sure that these women and children in particular are recovered from what is a very dire situation.
Penny Wong, for her part, as our Foreign Minister, explained why she used the word restraint.
I think it is always the right thing for Australia to urge restraint and the protection of civilian lives. People were suggesting that we ought not be in any conflict calling for the protection of civilian lives. Of course we should.
Now, this is, in a rhetorical sense and in a partial political sense, going to get uglier before it gets better anytime soon. But what she's talking about there is that, again, as Israel has every right to go and defeat every member of Hamas, to find all of their support systems and to free all of their hostages, no grey area there, the reality is that, of course, if those hostages are, say, being held on the top floor of a building, or the Hamas soldiers are at the top floor of a building, and you blow away an entire building, then what does it mean about the lives of those that are in the building, who are not part of Hamas, but for obvious reasons? People, including this woman, and I apologise again for the distressing content that you're seeing on your screen, she needs to be freed. The conversation about how she will be freed, I'm going to get to that in a very specific moment here about tactically. How do you go into a building and go after people on the top floor and make sure that you don't kill everyone on the many floors beneath? This is the difficulty for the Israeli army, as they will want to not just free their people but avenge the souls that have been killed of recent days, the many hundreds of them that have been killed in these many days. A CNN reporter explains why that is very difficult to do in an area that, remember, in the Gaza Strip is 11 kilometres wide, 40 kilometres long. It is a very small part of the world, but there are 2 million people who live in one of the most densely populated parts of the world.
But I think I picked up from him the extreme difficulty that is presented here, because Hamas won't give them up. And where they're scattered, where they're being held, underground tunnels, bunkers scattered across Gaza, it is an almost impossible task.
Nick Robertson, who is reporting for CNN.